Доброе утро. Меня зовут Bob Ryan. In Russian, that's good morning. My name is Bob Ryan.
That's Dr. Bob Ryan. He's a United Airlines pilot who also doubles as an emergency room physician at the Guam Memorial Hospital. Dr. Ryan is one of a handful of Americans who's had the privilege of being inside a Russian Tupolev 95 Bear bomber, the same aircraft that flew over Guam last Wednesday. His ability to speak Russian, coupled with his military and aviator background, may certainly be a factor as to how that happened.
I guess, there's some camaraderie among pilots regardless of where they're from and what countries they come from and that sort of thing. And I guess just talking to people and, indicating that, hey, we have something in common. Could I come out and see what you have out there? This was not the kind of thing where you could just drive up and get in. You definitely had to talk to people and make arrangements, and they had to decide they wanted to let you in.
Besides being a pilot himself, Dr. Ryan also frequently travels to Russia. Last summer, he found out that some of the Russian airplanes were being housed inside of an airbase in Ukraine. He says this is because after the Soviet Union broke apart, the Ukraine government returned its nuclear weapons back to Russia, but kept some of the airplanes, the Tupolev 95 and the Tupolev 160, among them. And as a pilot familiar with aircraft engineering, Dr. Ryan says that the Tupolev 95 Bear bomber has some striking similarities to American-made fighter jets.
For example, the Tupolev 95 was built by the same company that reverse engineered the B-29 at the end of World War II to become the Tupolev 4, which was Russia or the Soviet Union's first strategic bomber.
News of the unwelcome visit was alarming for some residents, not only because it was Russian bombers flying over Guam, but because the timing was also suspicious. It happened just before President Barack Obama's State of the Union address, forcing Andersen Air Force Base to scramble F-15 jets to intercept the Russian Bear bombers. But perhaps the most concerning part was that Guam didn't hear about it until 3 days later in news reports online. But Dr. Ryan, who has the unique benefit of being both an American living on Guam and a retired Army colonel and Air Force flight surgeon who frequents Russia and happens to speak the language, doesn't believe it's anything to worry about.
I really don't feel like we should worry about the Russians. The Russians are relatively well behaved, if you want to put it that way. If this was a North Korean airplane, I'd say there would be a far greater level of anxiety, or should be a far greater level of anxiety. I'd say that probably there would be a greater degree of anxiety if it were a Chinese airplane, because it would be completely unprecedented for those countries to do something like this. But the Russians have, like I said, they've flown Bear flights down the eastern seaboard back during the Cold War on a regular basis.
But the Washington Free Beacon reports that the bomber incident was considered highly unusual. Former State Department International Security Undersecretary John Bolton believes the bomber flights were part of an increasingly threatening strategic posture against President Obama's anti-nuclear policy. Regardless of the tension between the two countries, Dr. Ryan says Russians are generally friendly people.
The Russian people, if you meet them here on island, I think you're going to find them friendly and cordial. I've never had anyone treat me badly in Russia. I've treated people over there with respect and, tried to be cordial toward them, and it's always paid dividends.